Europe Treaty, covering basic domestic violence issues and seeking to end legal impunity for perpetrators. It covers 34 European countries and took effect in 2014. This news was but another wake-up call as to the significance of the events we mark this evening, the 5th anniversary of the events of the so-called Turkish coup of July 15, 2016. Whilst initially represented as a coup against the legitimate democratic government of President Erdogan, events since have seen the steady erosion of the very democratic institutions, civil society and human rights that the Erdogan government claimed to be saving. Doubts about the true nature and purpose of July the 15th, 2016 were raised within hours. In the 5 years since, the continuing actions of the Turkish government, including last month's actions annulling the Women's Convention, demonstrate the frailty of those assurances. Tonight's film, A Gift from God, presents a forensic examination of the events of the night of the 15th of July, 2016. The strength of the evidence raises significant questions about the legitimacy of the Erdogan government and the failure of the NATO countries to act in defence of the very democracy NATO exists to defend. Following the film, I'll be back for a discussion with the maker of this significant documentary, Jørgen Lorentzen, together with human rights and criminology academic Leighann Spencer. But for now, a gift from God. And thank you for watching this significant documentary film, A Gift from God. I'm John Cleary, and I'm delighted now to introduce the filmmaker, Jørgen Lorentzen. Together with Leighann Spencer, a human rights and criminology academic from La Trobe University in Melbourne. And you too may be interested in asking a question. If so, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Press that button, write your question, and we'll do our best to get to it. But I get to go first. Isn't that a privilege? Jørgen Lorentzen, thank you is hardly enough to say about such a film. We are very grateful. The significant evidence you adduce as to the events of July the 15th, to say the least, raises questions about the nature and purpose of the coup. It must have been seen by foreign affairs officials in all of the NATO countries. Have you had such interviews, and what have been the responses? I mean, the United States, the UK, France, Germany, everybody remained silent?
Almost. The response I've had from critics or from media or from other people that have seen the film, it's almost 100% positive. So people like it. They don't have any, let us say, critical comments when it comes to the content of the film. They think it's accurate and objective, which is perhaps the most important thing for me. But then I think, as we know from the general policy in the West and US when it comes to Turkey, to keep silence. So they also, of course, then will not comment on this film. Because if they start commenting on this film, then they also have to start discussing what's going on in Turkey, what has happened in Turkey, and what is Erdogan doing in Turkey. But so far, all the Western countries, the NATO, the EU, has basically been silent about what has happened, and almost no comments around the coup attempt 5 years ago.
Have you actually sat in a room with some of these diplomats and others and watched it with them and asked, or their officials, and asked for their responses personally?
No, I haven't. I've sent it to the Norwegian foreign minister, to the people in the foreign ministry, but they haven't responded directly. I mean, I have, of course, met and discussed a little bit with some of them, and they think that it's a good work, but officially, I don't think they are able to or allowed to comment.
Leighann Spencer, let me bring you in here. In the documentary, Jørgen states that the greatest tragedy is the human one. In 2019, you put together a very detailed report on the coup and the erosion of human rights which followed, and you chronicled the erosion of what one could be seen as a vibrant civil society. What for you stand out as some of the most significant concerns about what's happening inside the country?
Yeah, thanks, John. It is a bit hard to condense my concerns, as people can probably get the gist from Jørgen's film. It is going quite downhill and there is a lot to be concerned about. But I think I would really like to draw attention to just how much control has been gained for Erdogan and his party. So really executive control, as we call it in criminology. So right after the coup, a state of emergency was implemented, which gives extraordinary powers to the executive. And this is where we saw those dismissals, those mass investigations, mass arrests, shutdown of the media, erosion of press freedom. But state of emergencies are also supposed to be temporary. This was renewed 7 times, and that did end though in 2018, which gave a little bit of optimism. But during that time, Erdogan had really taken other measures to cement his control and cement some of those powers into official law. So one instance being a referendum that was held for constitutional changes, which occurred under the state of emergency. So as you can imagine, when there is fear of arrest under emergency powers, when the media has been shut down under emergency powers, the referendum passed actually with only about 51% saying yes. So you can imagine if there was different circumstances, there perhaps wouldn't have been constitutional changes. And this allowed a presidential system under Erdogan. Also allowed other changes such as the oversight mechanism for the judiciary now being under control of Erdogan and his political party, the AKP. So you can really see there why so many people are being persecuted when you don't have an independent judicial system. We also saw at the end of the state of emergency, a new anti-terrorism law put into place. So this continued allowing the dismissal of civil servants, so those from the military, the police, judges. It allowed provincial governors to ban any gatherings that were deemed terrorist, which has had effect on minority rights. So any protests for LGBTIQ+ rights, women's rights, Kurdish rights, any protests that have taken place can now be immediately banned. We've also seen with that law that people can be detained for up to 12 days with no reason. So no charges brought against them. They don't have to be taken in front of the court. They might not have their lawyers present. So these are really grave human rights violations. International criteria to only allow detention, usually for 1 or 2 days without a charge, is in place for a reason. Allowing 12 days without access to those procedural safeguards has given way to torture and ill treatment. On that note, we see severely overcrowded prisons from people being, hundreds of thousands of people being processed. Yeah, so there's many concerns, but you can see the lead-on effects, yeah.
Well, look, just one observation. We saw in March 26, there was some outrage when the domestic violence legislation was pulled back, or the Convention on Domestic Violence, and there were demonstrations in the streets then. Does this betoken that there really is still some significant resistance in the general populace? This isn't just political. There are genuine civil society concerns about this at the grassroots level.
Yes, definitely. So there have been really brave people in areas such as women's rights or Kurdish rights, other minority rights. Definitely, I would say that you do still see some pushback, but it has made it very difficult to do anything really criticize the way that things are working under Erdogan's regime. It really has been a gift from God for him to just have complete control over all the judicial system, security forces, and thus, yeah, ability to shut down events or press that go against him.
Jørgen, the Gulen movement was singled out as the coup plotters. And whilst Fethullah Gulen himself remains safe in the United States, members of his extended family have recently been rendered from other countries, again with very little international response. As a major civil society organisation from a Sufi foundation, which is oriented towards the West, to what extent was the Gulen movement the real target of the events of July the 15th?
First of all, John, I need to say that I'm very happy to be here and participate in this conversation on this day. It's a sad day, 5 days ago of the coup attempt, and I'm very happy that the film is screened in Australia and that people are able to see it. That's warming my heart. But you have to remember that it's a tough day for hundreds of thousands of people, especially people connected to the Gulen movement. That was the primary target of that night or the days after, as Leighann also has been writing about. But not only, we have also to remember that everybody is sort of called Gulenists or terrorists now in Turkey if they are opposing the regime. So this has been a label for anybody that is protesting or raise their voice against what is happening in Turkey. Even I am called Gulenist now and then in social media because I made this film and I'm critical against President Erdogan and what he's doing. So this is a situation we have to live with. But of course, it's enormous, catastrophic consequences for so many families, so many children, so many women and men that had been purged, imprisoned, tortured, had to flee the country, and now living in insecurity. Also because, as you mentioned, that Erdogan is sort of prolonging this war out of his borders. I mean, he's not only fighting opposition in Turkey, he's now, as we know, kidnapping and taking back, as you say, people from 18 different countries so far. You know, the last one, Inandi from Kyrgyzstan, kidnapped in the middle of the day with MIT as a part of it. Perhaps the embassy also was involved. And then now we know he's brought back and imprisoned in Turkey. So this is an ongoing fight, and it started before the coup. It started after 2013, the well-known situation in December 2013, and after that, he has been after the Gulen movement, especially.
Do you have any worries for your own family's security in this matter?
After the film was launched in Oslo at the main theater here, we had a big event. Henry Barker was here and made a speech and also was interviewed in different media in Norway. We met because we have had during the years a quite close relationship with the Turkish embassy in Norway. And in a situation just right after the launch of the film, we met the ambassador, and he came up to me and said, "From now on, I cannot speak to you anymore. You are now looked upon as the enemy of the state of Turkey." So this was a clear message from the ambassador, which also make it the sad conclusion for us that we are not also able to travel back to Turkey before we have a regime change in Turkey.
Leighann, let me ask you one other question, then we'll take some from our viewers. In the days immediately following the coup in 2016, most media organisations bought into the Erdogan version of events, and it took a while for the other version to seep through. What's been the impact for you of reports such as yours, or are you finding much the same effect as Jørgen has had with his film? That there's, yeah, well, thanks very much, but.
Yeah, really good question. Thanks, John. I must say, possibly mixed. On the one hand, I do think that my reports have gained a lot of attention because they are one of those that do go against that official narrative of the regime. I do some work on some other countries, and I must say Turkey is always the one that gets the most publicity, the most reads. But on the other hand, I have experienced knockbacks from organizations. There was one that I was writing for in those early days about Turkey online, and they started experiencing cyber attacks, which they could tell were coming from Turkey. So then they told me that we no longer can publish your reports. So there has been incidents like that. And definitely pushback from more official politicians. Have tried to work with various organizations to get a stronger response from the West, particularly Europe, because Turkey is participant to European conventions, but no luck on that regard. But I will say that I luckily do feel quite safe here in Australia, and my family is here in Australia, so I do feel more for those that live in Turkey or have family in Turkey.
Well, I get a response to both of you from a question that's occurring in a number of the, I'm looking down at my phone as questions are coming in, so I do apologize for that. but the generic tone of several of them is, how do you explain, and this is a question to both of you, this lack of interest from other countries, from the NATO countries, and the wider democracies? I mean, what's going on here? Jørgen, first to you, the geopolitics of it, I guess.
Yeah, the geopolitics of it, it's very, very interesting. And I think I'm still will answer the way I'm presenting it in the film, that it's a move towards the east going on in Turkey. You know, they have for a long time dealt with Iran, have a close relationship with Iran. They have a closer relationship, even though it's tensions there, with Russia. China is ready to be involved in Turkey whenever, but I think Erdogan is trying to hold back when it comes to China so far. NATO especially, but also which means the whole West, is extremely afraid of losing Turkey. Turkey is strategically extremely important. Not only do they have a huge army, the next largest army in NATO after US, but they also have stationed strategic nuclear weapons in Turkey by the Americans. So of course America is very concerned about this situation. So that's why they think that, okay, Erdogan will be there for a while, it will be a tough years, but then it will be it will change. Let us hope it will change soon. Let me give you one example of the stupidity, I will almost say, in the response from the West, is our own Norwegian foreign minister. When Turkey was invading, I mean, this is a war against another country, invading northern Syria, the Norwegian foreign minister said, together with the rest of the response from the Western countries, please be careful. You know, not stop it, not go back, not that it's illegal, because it's absolutely illegal, but just be careful. Take care, please take care. You know, that's what we're saying to each other, you know, when we wish each other a good day. So this is the response. They hope it, I think they just hope it will pass.
And of course, Erdogan tweaks the nose of the United States by doing a deal over Russian missiles.
Yeah. It's amazing, you know, looking from a NATO perspective, a military perspective, it's amazing. But it's like Perinçek, how shall they defend ourselves against America if they think America is an enemy? They have to have different weapons, not the NATO system. So, yeah.
Leighann, let me come in here to pose something here, because I've got a question that I'll direct at you. I'll read it out directly. Thanks for your program. I am one of the judges who was arrested that first night. What do you think about the 2,745 judges and prosecutors who were arrested before the soldiers?
Really great question, and it is absolutely mind-blowing, as mentioned in the film, just how quickly these lists, or that more likely that these lists had already been put together, but just how quickly the process started on arresting people, and people that in no way have actually participated in the coup. So that's one of my specialities, is looking at that executive control of the justice system. And I think that really has been a priority for Erdogan and the AKP as well. And if you control it from the beginning, that allows the other arrests and charges, persecution to take place. So I would say that was probably strategic. And absolutely horrible just to see those lead-on effects occur, not only allowing people to be persecuted in line with Erdogan's will, but also more general impacts on the justice system when you have all these experienced judges now dismissed or arrested. I've seen that the average judge's experience now is only about 3 years experience. Because they're new to the system. So it's prolonged cases, it's seen inconsistency. It's absolutely horrible and probably strategic.
I've got another compound question, Jørgen. I'll put it to you. You managed to get a response from at least one party in your documentary. That's Perinçek and his Patriotic Party, and they seemed awfully well informed on the state of things. So 2 parts of this question. To what extent do you think Perinçek is central to the way events have unfolded and his relationship with Erdogan? But secondly, why do you think that initially when you were asking for interviews, you didn't get responses from the AKP and the government to put their view?
That's correct. I sent a different through different corridors to try to get to the Erdogan and the government of Turkey to make an interview. I could interview anybody. If Erdogan pointed to someone that I should interview, it would be okay to have it in the film. But I think the strategic way of thinking is that we neglect it. We don't want to take part in it and be a part of it. That's the sort of the feeling I got in contact with the embassy and responsibility for the Turkish government. When it comes to Perinçek, he's a very interesting guy. It was actually very funny to meet him and I had a long time with him and discussed a lot of things with this person. He was important when it came to the months before the coup attempt. You all remember the shutdown of the Russian jet in December 2015, half a year before, which increased the crisis between Russia and Turkey. And Perinçek was very important when it comes to meetings, so several meetings that were held after December until July between different top government people and top people from Russia, to try to negotiate a deal between them and find back a relationship, because Perinçek is close to Russia and he's close to China, and he is the connection in a way between the Turkish government in that period, and so he knows a lot. He was in prison after Ergenekon for 5 years. He hated the Gulenists too, so he was important for Erdogan to use when he started his purge against the Gulenists after 2013. So I think they have a good connection, but they are not really good friends. Of course, Perinçek told me personally afterwards that for now, Erdogan is okay to have in power, but he's not our guy.
It seems to be a world of my enemy's enemy is.
He is a very, very strange person, you know, but he has very good contacts. It's top officers that are a part of his party, and so he's well informed.
Leighann, another question for you. There are still thousands in jail, either awaiting their hearing or having received life sentences, and these cases are not being accepted by the EU HRC the Commission, saying the internal processes have not yet been exhausted. Do they not know that the internal process is the very reason they are in jail? How could we lobby the EU HRC, I guess that's the European Human Rights Commission, for these people to get a fair trial?
I really appreciate this being pointed out, because this is something I have been trying to work on myself, that lobbying, and trying to convince them, because it is that to have cases heard, you have to exhaust all viable domestic avenues. So trying to convince them that they're not viable domestic avenues has been quite a process. And because that also includes the right to appeal. So it can take years, it can take like 10 years for you to exhaust domestic avenues. And that's, you know, in good circumstances, let alone when the courts are under AKP control. As to how other people can lobby the EU, events like this is a great start. Getting the word out there, letting people know what is going on, what the court system is actually like, because I do think it's just going to take pressure to try and pressure from the public. Ultimately, would be great if we could hear some politicians speak out, etc. But that's the only way really I can expect, we can expect the European Court to take these cases more seriously, and perhaps remove that criteria necessary.
Jørgen, do you have any observations on what Leighann said there?
I feel the same way, and I think it's very correct what she's pointing to. And I'm a little bit disappointed by the European Court of Human Rights and what they're doing. Of course, they're overloaded with cases from Turkey. I don't know how many thousands cases they have stacked up there. And they think that if they make a decision in one case, it's almost for all of them, and then you will have a difficult political situation. So it's a little bit disappointing to see what European Court of Human Rights is doing with these cases. And of course, they know that the new system that is working in Turkey is just to keep going for years and years before it can then be taken by European Court of Human Rights.
Well, Leighann, the final section of your 2019 report includes a solid section on impacts and recommendations. We've mentioned the European Court there, but if I had to sort of press you and say, what would your key 3 recommendations be coming out of your report? One which we would urge people to read, and I'm sure we'll arrange for a link to it to be put on the website for Advocates for Dignity. But just your summary of perhaps the key recommendations you'd like to see taken up.
Yeah, definitely. And I would definitely encourage people to look at that report or take it upon themselves to look at more information. It is hard to condense. But I would definitely, a recommendation to Turkey in itself that I'm sure they wouldn't listen to, but if I was to have one strong recommendation to Turkey, it would be to ensure that justice system oversight mechanism was actually independent, because I strongly do think that is the lead on to allowing all these atrocities to occur. And going forward from that, I would highly recommend for the European Court of Human Rights to take action on the cases put forward to it, but even just putting out actual statements, because there are so many human rights violations from the convention that Turkey is signature to that are occurring and are ongoing. So at the very least, to put out a statement. Thirdly, I would also, I suppose I would recommend that more globally, we do see people, politicians step forward, also making those statements, perhaps even considering more concrete measures such as travel bans, import bans. When it does reach this level of a situation, we often see with other dictatorships or countries heading towards dictatorships that you do start putting like economic pressure on these countries, but we have yet to see anything like that towards Turkey. So I suppose those would be my top three, trying to give a broad reach as well to different people. But
Jørgen, let's just take a final observation from you, because we are running out of time. Just in the last few days, we've seen Joe Biden in the United States talk about the critical state of democracy in the United States and around the world, and how we've all got to get our act together and realize that the rule of law is what it's all about. Are you optimistic at all in perhaps the turn of politics at the moment? That perhaps the era of the fashionable dictator may in fact be coming under challenge?
Yeah, John, we are living in a grim world. The last statistics I saw was that 60% of the world population are now living in under authoritarian regimes, in dictatorships, with no freedom of speech and with spooky human rights. And the 80 million people in Turkey are among these 60% living under these conditions. I get reports every day from my friends in Turkey. People are arrested, people are harassed in different cities in the east and in the west. If they try to demonstrate, they will be knocked down by the police very, very soon, very easily. And it's a very, very tough situation, and it's hard to know what is the way out of this. Of course, we who are happily and luckily living in democratic countries can only do one thing, and that is push for democracy all over the world all the time, again and again and again. And of course, we have to do compromises. I know that. We have to deal with the countries that are authoritarian, but we have to negotiate, and we have to push and push and push. That's the only thing we can do as human beings and as nations, and in the organizations we are living in and working in. And I hope there will be an election in Turkey in 2023. It's an important election for Erdogan, but now he has only not more than 30% popularity in Turkey, and I don't think it will increase in the next 2 years. For the economy is bad. The situation is not good at all. And that will give the possibility for him. He has to negotiate with others, and we can hope for some negotiations there, which not perhaps keeping Erdogan in power for the rest of his life.
Jørgen Lorentzen, Leighann Spencer, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Jørgen, for your film, A Gift from God.
Thank you.
Let's hope it can be seen by many, many more people. Leighann, thanks for coming from La Trobe University, and a special thanks to Mehmet Sarel and Advocates for Dignity. I'm John Cleary. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.